everyone, today's project is going to be a sewing project. I've not done one for ages and I really do enjoy sewing. I'm not an expert, I just play around and see how things turn out. Now this style drawstring bag, you know, they're all over the net. There are varying widths, heights, processes for making them. I decided to do my own, and this particular one is the first one I've done, and it was determined actually by the check, the gingham fabric. I wanted to use this green, and then I found some other greens that I had in my sewing stash. And this particular green was only a certain width. I think it was only about 10 inches. So that kind of determined the size of my bag. It's got a nice boxed bottom on it. It's all fully lined. And it's got padding in it, so it's nice and squishy, so whatever you put in it, it would protect it. But I was thinking this one would probably make a nice knitting bag. Pull it together. It's tall enough, it would take knitting needles, I'm sure it would. It would take, you know, a good few balls of wool, maybe crochet hooks, that kind of thing. So this is my project, so if you want to know how I made it, keep watching. Okay, so the supplies that you're going to need are 2 pieces of fabric to make the casing, which are about 8.5 by 3.5, and then I've literally just folded them in 1/4 inch and in 1/4 inch again at either end, and then folded them in half. I'm going to sew these ends down first to secure them. So that's your casing. For the bottom section, this is 9.5 by 10. Then for the front and back, again 9.5 by 10, and you need 2 of those. And then for the lining, I've cut a piece that's 9.5 by about 29 inches long. And then I've cut some wadding, and I've made this the same length, but I've not made it as wide. So I'm leaving a bit of a gap here so that when I sew, I'm not, you know, sewing through all that bulk. And this is going to be sewn down so it'll be held in place. So the first thing, oh, and then I've got 2 pieces of ribbon. You could use cord, whatever you want. These are about 1 yard each. And this is a nice kind of double-edged satin ribbon. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew down these 2 short edges on the casing on both pieces. And I'm just using a plain white thread in the top and bottom of my machine. And I'm just on a regular straight stitch. And then I'm going to do the same on this side and then the other piece. Okay, so that's those 2 pieces done now. So I'm just going to put those on one side. So the finished size of these is about just over 7 inches, something like that, by about 1.5. These are going to make the casing for the ribbon. So I'm going to bring in my bottom piece now, and this is the 9.5 inch. So I'm going to put it right side down for now. And then I'm going to bring in the front and the back. And obviously these sizes are fairly close, so make sure that you're getting you know, your 9.5 and your 10. In the right orientation. So I'm going to sew right sides together, these two pieces now here, and these two pieces here to give me one long piece. And again, I'm just using a regular straight stitch on my machine. I'm not doing 1/4 inch seams or anything like that. You can do if you want. It's entirely up to you. My needle's just set in the middle and it's on a regular straight stitch. So it's probably 3/8, something like that. I'm not really sure. So that's that one, and then what I will do is I'll press the seams in towards the bottom piece, and then put those two together and do the same. So that's how it's looking so far, and then I'm going to press these seams inward to, because this is going to be the bottom of the bag. And I love this flower fabric. I've had it a while. It was quite expensive. Can't remember who made it, but it really is lovely. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get my batting or wadding, and I'm just going to position this. I'm not bothered about, it's a bit too big, so I'm not bothered about that. Now you could spray baste this in place, or you can pin it, you know, whatever you want to do with it. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to just sew some straight lines on either side of the fold. I'm just going to iron that fold out a bit more. So I'm going to do a line of sewing here and here, and the same here and here, and then I may leave a few inches and do another line of sewing. Okay, so I've got my 4 rows of stitching here now, which you're probably not going to be able to see, but that's all holding that together. I've just trimmed off the wadding to make it flush, and now I'm going to bring in my casings that I've already sewn the edges of. I've just got some thread here. So these casings are going to go centrally on either end with the open side facing out. So here's my other one folded in half, and it's just going to go on here centrally like so. Then the lining is going to go on top. And then I'm going to pin or clip it all together. So I've got my main fabric right side up with my wadding on the back. I've got my casing with the open edges to the open edges, and I'm just going to sit that centrally along the edge. And then I'm going to get my lining and put that down on top. And then I'm going to pin that or clip it, whichever you prefer. I'm going to use clips, and clip it all together and do the same at this end. So I'm sitting the casing with the open edges here. Again, you know, centrally. You could measure it, but it's not vital. and then put the lining over it. Just making sure that I'm clipping all the layers together. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to sew a straight seam right across here and right across the bottom, so on the two short sides. Okay, so I've got all that sewn together, and I'm going to do the same on this end. Okay, so this is what we've got. So now I'm going to pick up the lining and bring the two sides of the lining together, and then this will give me the two sides of the main fabric together. And then what I'm going to do, just open it up so you can see where I've sewn in the casing. I'm going to line up this seam and this seam together. And I'm going to put a clip, and I'm going to do the same on here. So I'm just going to open them up so you can see and line up the two seams together. A bit like when you're quilting, you know, like when you nest your seams. I mean, you know, I'm not an expert. I'm just trying this. I've not made this bag before. And then I'm just going to put some clips in it just to hold the rest of it together. And because the batting doesn't go all the way to the edge, you can sew these seams, you know, quite comfortably. And again, at the bottom where I've joined the different colour fabric, I'm going to nest those seams together and put a clip in there. Because I want it to look nice. I want it to look professional. And, you know, if I'm going to try and sell it, I want the person that, you know, buys it to be happy with it. So again, I'm going to put that in there. Another clip there. And then this one is just fabric to fabric. There's no joins, so this is easy. So again, I'll just put a clip in it. But what I am going to do, so on one side, I'm going to sew straight down all the way along. On the other side, I'm going to start from here, sew along, back tack, leave an opening, start again, back tack, and go all the way down. So I'm going to have an opening in one of the sides of the lining. It doesn't matter which side, so long as you remember to leave an opening. So I'm going to do it on my first side, and then hopefully I won't forget to do it. So I'm just going to come along, leave, you know, a gap, because this will get sewn up later. Start again, back tack. And then when you get to the bit, you know, near where your seams are, just take your time. And as I say, because you've not got the wadding going all the way to the edge, it's making this easier to sew. And then I'm going to repeat it with this side, only this side now I can just go straight down because I've already left my opening on my other side. So this is how it's looking now. So I've got an opening here for when I'm going to turn it, but I'm going to box the corners now just to make it look a little bit more professional. So these are just some little templates that I made on the ScanNCut, and I just keep them on one of these book rings. So this is just a 1.5 inch square. So what I'm going to do now, on both the corners of the lining and the main fabric, I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to line up my square with the sewing line, not with the edge, with the sewing line, and then the bottom. And then I'm just going to use an air erasable pen and draw around it. And I'm going to do the same here. So not the edge of the fabric, with the sewing line. So the sewing line and the bottom. And then we're going to cut that away on both sides. So now I'll show you on this end because it's probably going to be easier to see than with all that wadding on that end. You're just going to open this up, and because you've used a square, this should open up together nice and neatly and give you a straight line. I'm just going to put a couple of clips, and then I'm going to do the same. So stick your fingers in the gap, and then this should open up and lie together nice and flat. And then I'm going to again put this under the machine and sew straight along there and straight along there. And I'm going to do exactly the same with this. So you've got 2 layers here. So open it up. It should open up nice and flat for you, and do exactly the same thing. And again, I'm lining the edge of my foot up with this straight line, and I'm just going to sew straight across. I'm going to back tack at either end. So that's how it's looking, and I'm going to do the same now on the other 3. So that's all 4 corners sewn now. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put my hand into the opening that I left in the lining, and I'm going to start to pull this all through. So take your time, because you know it is a bit bulky, but it will all come through. The gap, you know, providing you've left at least 3 or 4 inches. Just manoeuvre it through gently. You don't want to rip any seams, but at the end of the day, if you do, it's only the lining and we can sew it up again. I'm just going to stuff it all in. Looks a bit of a mess at the moment, but hopefully it'll all be okay. And then just put your hand right into the corners and push out those box corners. You can see how good it's looking. And then do the same with your lining. So, you know, push out your box corners. Got some thread there that I just need to. And then, so this is how it's looking at the moment, and here's the opening. Now, if you put your fingers in the opening and pull, it will pull those seams together. The folds will fold in. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a couple of clips in to hold it. So that's where it starts. Now, you could hand stitch this, but it's going to be in the lining, so it doesn't really matter. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start here where it's already sewn together and just come onto the fabric, sew all the way down close to the edge and just grab those 2 seams together. And then just remove your pins or your clips as you go. But you just want to sew very, very, very close to the edge, because you know you want to close up that gap. So I'll show you how it's looking. That's what I've done. So just clip the threads, and we're nearly done. So now I'm going to open up my bag and push my lining down into the bottom. Got a thread there that I need to get rid of. this is how it's looking. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to sew a top stitch line just all the way around the top here, all the way around. It'll just hold that lining into place and make it look a little bit better. So I'm going to remove the bed off my machine and just roll, you know, roll everything in, push all the lining all the way down. And I'm just going to pop this on the free arm of the bed of my machine. Okay, I'll just put this back together. So that's all the sewing done. So now I'm going to get my ribbons and I'm just going to get a big pin and put it in the end of one of these pieces of ribbon. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start at one side, I'm going to thread it through so it comes out, thread it back in and out this end. So I'm going to end up with 2 open ends on this side, and then I'm going to start on the opposite side and do the same. So go in, come out and go back in. So you'll end up with 2 open ends of ribbon on that side and 2 open ends on this side, if that makes sense. Do the same thing. So I'm just going to pull those 2 tight for now so they're just out of my way, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to start on the opposite side, so I'll have open ends at this end, so in, round and back out. You've now got threads coming out at both ends. I'm just going to bring them in a little bit like that. You don't need loads. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to tie a knot. Because obviously these are going to get longer when you pull it together. So as I say, I have got, you know, too much thread, but I'd rather have too much than too little. So now when you pull that together, it's going to pull in like so, and then I can chop these ends off because I don't need them. And there's my bag. So, you know, it opens out, you've got plenty of room to get in there. You've got the nice squared off base, you've got some, you know, sewing lines there. This, you know, you don't even have to use it with the drawstrings. You could just fold it over and have it as a a storage container on your desk or something, but you have got the option there, store taller things in it, you can do.